Welcome to our Facebook Live talking about home birth today. I'm going to add Cassie in. Hi, Cassie. I'm going to add you right now. Hey, Angela. Hey, Michelle. How are you? So, Cassie, you just have to click yourself in. And if you are here with us live, will you please type live in the comments? Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. This is so fun. I need to back my phone up a little bit. Okay.
Can you hear us? People that are live, Michelle, can you hear us talking? If not, let us know.
Sorry, I'm trying to get a little stability there.
Cool. Let's just see for a second. Hey, Lisa. Can you hear me? All right, so let's just go ahead and get started. Cool. So if you're new around here, my name is Leah, and great. I had a baby at home 7 months ago today. Cassie, you were in my living room.
Happy 7-month birthday.
Yeah, so we're going to talk a little bit about having a baby at home and what that kind of healthcare looks like, because I think it's a really great option for a lot of women, and they just don't know that it's out there. So Cassie, you want to start by telling us a little bit about you and how you came into this field?
Yes, I would love to. My name is Cassie. I have 3 kids, and I came to midwifery pretty much through the birth of my own children. My first was born in the hospital here in Las Vegas, and I'm sure by everyone in attendance, it was considered a roaring success. And I kind of walked out of that experience going, that's it? Wait a minute. There should be more to this. Becoming a parent, that moment of meeting your child. And so it encouraged me to dig deeper when I got pregnant again. I thought there has to be more. So I started researching. I did not know I had choices before I got pregnant the first time. I kind of went with the standard of care in the United States. And once I started exploring, I found support. I found people that believed in me and my body and my ability to birth babies. And so I had my next 2 at home. And it was such a vastly different experience that when I was ready to go back to work, and my career before having children, I knew wasn't feasible after having children. So when I went back to work, I went back to school to be a midwife.
Awesome. And where did you go to school?
Most midwives here in Las Vegas, if they are direct entry midwives, meaning we don't have a nursing degree beforehand, we do self-study, which sounds very kind of unstructured and vague, but we follow an apprenticeship model, meaning that we work with an experienced midwife who,
like Sherry, who just hopped on.
Oh, she did?
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. Hi, Sherry. I can't see who's on or not at all. So yes, she was my preceptor actually. So I studied with her, and then we do our own self-study in preparation for a certifying exam.
Okay, because there are different levels, like you said, if you're a nurse or not.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, there are different. There's certified nurse midwives. We do have some here in Las Vegas. The majority practice in a hospital setting under an obstetrician. There are, I think, a couple nurse midwives that do home birth. And then the rest of the midwives here are direct entry midwives. Some have chosen to be certified. Some don't choose to be certified.
Okay.
So here in Nevada, we don't have a lot of legislation regarding midwifery.
And that's a state-by-state thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's regulated on a state level.
Okay, so we're just kind of talking about what we do here in Nevada today, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about what midwifery really is. I think a lot of people, when I first told them that I was, using a midwife and not an OB, they just thought I was going to go into the backwoods somewhere and have a baby with this lady. And I was like, no, very different. So tell us a little about that.
That's funny because when I first heard about midwifery, my idea was, I don't know if you've seen the movie Brave with Merida. It's a Disney animated feature, but there's this witch in the woods that does like spells out of a cauldron. And that's kind of what I thought a midwife was. But basically, midwifery is a model of maternity care worldwide. And the difference between midwifery care and the medical model of maternity care is that, well, one of the big differences is that it's based on the premise that having a baby, growing a baby, is a natural function of a woman's body. So it's not a medical emergency. It's something that our bodies were made to do. The other part of it is that the care is very collaborative. It's not you go into an office and the midwife tells you what they're going to do to you or what is going to be done. With midwifery, it's much more, here's what's going on at this point in your pregnancy. These are things that we generally keep an eye on right now. And these are your choices regarding that. Here is why you may or may not choose to be tested for this. If you choose to, here are all your options on how you want to do it. That's kind of how midwifery care works. So it's very collaborative, and that we together decide the best care for you and your baby.
Perfect.
It's not a one-size-fits-all.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's why I was so attracted to you and Well-Rounded Mamas, because I like my choices and I don't like being told what to do, especially when it comes to something so major. So I just love that.
Totally.
So what about, you know, you said you wanted to talk about how birth actually works and like the hormonal process. So that kind of piggybacks on that last statement.
It does. So birth in and of itself is hormonal. All the functions of our body are ruled by our hormones. I mean, that's kind of what gets us into the mess. We fall in love, hopefully, and we make a baby with someone. Not always, but so our hormones regulate those processes. In birth, the hormone that actually causes a woman's uterus to contract is oxytocin, which is the love hormone. So being at home is a great environment for women who are comfortable with that to birth a baby, because when you're home, generally you're more relaxed. You're around all of your own things. You have people there that you invite into your home. Birth is very intimate, but at home it's even more intimate. You're not going to have a stranger walking in while you're having a baby. And that can be stressful for a lot of people. Walking into a hospital, people might have traumatic association. Maybe the last time they were in a hospital, someone they really cared about was sick or ill. So walking into that environment can create stress, which works against that oxytocin. Being at home really helps facilitate, if someone's comfortable with it, the whole birth process. So
what about like getting induced when they go into the hospital? Do you know what the numbers are with that? Because I know that's a pretty high statistic, right?
It is a pretty high statistic. There are certain doctors in town that we recommend, that we work with, but I tell people they're notorious for inducing. I think a big part of that is working on a doctor's schedule. There's generally, I just actually had a home birth client who transferred care to a paranate for medical reasons. Something came up with their baby, and it was medically indicated for her to be induced. But for the most part, people are not induced for any medical reason. It's generally fear of a big baby, or maybe their doctor is going on vacation and they're unsure about what that will look like with a different care provider. There's not a lot of times that it's medically indicated to induce.
And what happens to the hormonal process as soon as you get induced? Because I know that kind of messes up the whole flow going down, right?
Well, totally. Then we're pushing the envelope, trying to create something that a woman's body and baby's the one that starts the whole labor process. So we're pushing that, which if a woman's body isn't receptive to that and baby's not ready, then it generally brings in a whole host of interventions. meaning the need for Pitocin, and which might then lead to getting an epidural, which brings along a catheter and all kinds of other things, and how baby reacts to that. So I'm a big believer that the best thing for mom and baby, if we can, which most of the time we can, is to allow them to go into labor on their own.
One of the biggest questions that I've gotten from other moms is after having a baby and trying to breastfeed. And no one is telling anybody that all of these interventions and all of these drugs that you're putting into your body kind of stop the hormonal production of breast milk and breastfeeding. And I know a lot of women who are really sad that they didn't know that, because they would have chosen not to get an epidural so that they could breastfeed. Do you have anything regarding that?
I think along the same lines as the hormones that lead us into labor and through labor, same hormones help with breastfeeding. So it's such a perfect dance, and that you're holding your baby. Hopefully you're smelling your baby, you're feeling your baby, you're bonding with your baby, gets that oxytocin going. Oxytocin is the same hormone that's involved in the letdown of our breast milk. So again, anything that's going to interfere with that hormonal dance can have repercussions in breastfeeding. Okay. So totally.
So what's something someone can do if they are in the hospital and do decide, you know, I do want an epidural, but they also want to breastfeed? What are some things that they can do to help with that?
I think not even around the epidural topic, but just in the hospital, have a doula. Have someone there to help someone stay with their birth, to create a plan, and to then help stay on plan. And someone there whose sole job and responsibility and concern is helping that oxytocin flow, helping a woman and a family stay comfortable and feeling nurtured, so that regardless of an epidural, they still feel supported and safe, so that then that hormone level can carry over postpartum. And then postpartum, again, a doula being there to help the family and the mom advocate for themselves, that when they say they want skin to skin, they really want skin to skin. And when they say they want uninterrupted contact with their baby, they really want uninterrupted contact. Not someone taking the baby for 20 minutes while the mom is just sitting there, but someone who really helps support of those newborn assessments being done skin to skin.
Okay, and can you touch on, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, a lot of times in the hospital, they interpret skin to skin as baby on a towel, which I always think is so funny, because that's not skin. Skin to skin is important. It sounds so basic, but even that helps contribute.
And can actually help keep them warmer, right? If they're touching you versus being wrapped in a towel.
Yes.
What about, so touch a little bit on a doula and what the difference is. What is a doula? What's the difference between a doula and a midwife? Why would somebody want one in a hospital or at home?
Okay. A doula is there strictly for informational, emotional, physical support, meaning they don't have any clinical responsibility. Sometimes people do have clinical skills, but unless they're hired knowing that as a doula, most doulas do not. They don't do anything clinical. So they are there strictly to help support. A midwife has clinical responsibility. So a pregnant woman, if she hires a care provider, in the hospital, it would be an obstetrician or a nurse midwife. In a home environment, it would be a midwife. The midwife is the primary care provider who has that clinical responsibility, the overall well-being of mom and baby. A doula is there to support, help talk through, offer suggestions. And a doula and a midwife really complement each other, and they support each other, but they do have different roles.
Cool. Yeah, I know you said that my husband got like the best doula award when we had our kid here. He was great. Yeah. Hey, Sky, I see you.
Is he on?
Yeah.
Oh, hi,
so
Sky.
Yeah, if you guys are live with us, type live so that we know that you were here. And if you're watching the replay, feel free to type replay. So again, we can say hi afterwards. If you have any questions for Cassie at the end, feel free to type them in and we'll try to go over them. So what's next? The advantages of home birth?
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Okay.
I think we touched on a big one, which is comfort. For a lot of women, the thought of going to a hospital creates anxiety or tension, which works against the whole birth process. So that's a huge one, I think. And I remember walking into your birthplace and how just absolutely, I wasn't working hard. You were bringing baby, but just how relaxing it was.
Mm-hmm.
And it really represented you. I felt like you
Yeah.
had done your work and you had all of the things around you that help you feel good. And so I think that's great. In a hospital, a lot of times they have protocols in place that work against that. So that's a big advantage.
Mm-hmm.
Another one I think is being able to invite whoever into that space that you want to have there. Because having those people there really helps women feel supported. We have a lot of kids that watch home birth. Kids don't generally have the same reaction to birth as we as adults do. They're not conditioned to. So it's neat to involve the family. I've had people who opt to have home birth because they don't want to leave their children, or they want them to be able to be there for the birth of their sibling. And so we spend a lot of time talking about how to do that in a healthy way, but that's a really great advantage. I think for people who don't want pain medication, being at home is a good chance or a good support of that, because in the hospital it's there, and sometimes knowing it's there makes it a little harder for people to stick with their plan. And then I really think the biggest advantage is the relationship that you have with your care provider. I tell people when they meet me for the first time that the goal is by the time they're in labor, I'm walking in their home and I'm not a stranger. They're not like, oh, somebody's here. I need to get her something to drink, or I hope she's not rummaging through our things. By the time I show up, people are really comfortable with me and I'm comfortable with them. So if I need something, it's okay that I go look in your cabinets, because we build that relationship. And with that comes accessibility. So all of my clients have my cell phone number. They can text or call me. So it's about building. It's more than just checking on your baby's heart rate and taking a blood pressure. Home birth.
Yeah. And maybe even like, let's talk about some like the advantages that there are through the pregnancy process and not just the birth process. Cause I know I was really surprised at how much homework you gave me on mindset and preparing. And I know that I would not have gotten that with a doctor. I know I wouldn't have. We met a lot, like you just said, through the pregnancy process and like became really well acquainted. So for me, I know that was a really big thing. And it made me feel more comfortable, especially because everybody else in the world was so scared for me. And that can also really change your mindset quickly if you're not working on it every single day.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You want to give a couple examples of some things that we did, like things that you do with each client through the pregnancy process? Hey, Whitney.
The first thing that just popped into my head was the love languages. One of the things I have my clients do is we talk about the love languages. Some people are already familiar with that. But if not, we do a little Cosmo quiz version. And for those people that don't know, the love languages is the idea. Someone wrote a book. I feel bad I don't know the author's name.
Me either.
But they wrote a book with the idea that we give and express, we give and receive love in one of 5 ways. And most people are a combination. But I have my clients do that because it gives me insight into how they relate to each other as a team. But then I also think it can be an aha moment for my clients when they're like, oh yeah, okay, you're right. He does do all these things for me. His love language is acts of service. And maybe up to that point that hadn't been recognized, that in those moments, that's a partner's way of saying that they love their partner. So that's a good tool. We do things like that, which is an exercise in communication, basically.
Yeah.
For the 3 of us. Diet diaries. I have my clients do diet diaries.
Which no doctor's ever going to ask you to do.
I know, right?
Yeah.
They might ask you one question, but
Yeah.
we do spend a lot of time talking about nutrition. Homework, comfort measures is a big one too. I think I have all my clients start out by just making a list using their 5 senses of all the things that help them feel nurtured and safe when they have a hard day or they're under stress or duress, what helps them feel good. And that's the beginning of our plan for how to stay comfortable in labor. Yeah, I do give a lot of homework.
Yeah. And those are all, you know, if you're rewatching this, those are all things that you can still do if you are having a child in the hospital. Because knowing your partner's love language has only, you know, helped our marriage afterwards as well. Which is a whole other topic on after you have a baby. Oh man.
Yeah, that's true. That's another video.
Yeah. Awesome. I know there's any other advantages that you can think of off the top of your head?
Let's see. I think a big one too that I didn't touch on is that normally when we're at home in a home birth setting, just the model of care is that we have a smaller client load. So an obstetrician and not doing births in the hospital, they're seeing clients every 10 to 15 minutes all day long. They have a huge client load and they're only coming for the end of the birth in the hospital. So I think a big advantage to midwifery care and home birth is that on average, I'm taking maybe 3 clients a month. So my clients have a lot of my attention because I have that to give them, which goes back to that accessibility with care provider.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So let's talk about safety. I know we just got a question about high-risk pregnancy, and if you are a high-risk pregnancy, can you still have a home birth, or, you know, where's that line drawn?
Very good question. It's not always a super clear line to start with. As a midwife, I specialize in low-risk birth and pregnancy. So someone who has pre-existing health condition, maybe insulin-dependent diabetic, that would generally rule someone out of home birth. Having had multiple C-sections, that might rule someone out of home birth. Epilepsy, things like that. Those things tend to rule people out of home birth. Again, I say it's not a super clear line. If you're interested in home birth, it pays off to talk. Talk to a high-risk perinatologist, talk to more than one midwife, and see and really explore your options. I have a good relationship. All the midwives at Well Rounded Mama have really good relationship with some of the perinatologists in town. A perinatologist is a high-risk obstetrician who specializes in high-risk pregnancy. So I definitely have clients where if I see something coming up in their pregnancy or something that kind of triggers a little, makes me pause for a moment, oftentimes I'll refer them to them for a second opinion and just see. And there have been several times where I've had clients who go to the perinatologist the duration of their pregnancy as we're keeping an eye on something. And then at the end of the pregnancy and that last trimester, we kind of make that call together as a team. Is this reasonable to have a birth at home? Or is this something where the best interest of mom and baby is to move into a hospital setting?
And you still work in hospitals, right? So someone could hire a midwife and...
Totally. I don't have hospital privileges. So my client who recently was medically induced or induced for medical reasons, I did join her in the hospital. We had worked together for about 7 months. And so I went and supported her in the hospital, but not in a care provider role.
Okay.
More as just a familiar face.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. But generally, my goal is continuity of care, that my clients feel supported the whole way. Even if down the road, that means that I'm not their care provider, I make sure that they're with someone they feel comfortable with. Yeah.
I know.
Safety is probably my number one question I get asked in consults is about safety.
Yeah. And that was my number one question from like friends and family is like, what if something goes wrong? And, you know, we did a lot of prep work to make sure, you know, as much as possible, nothing would go wrong. But I know I live farther away from a hospital than most people in this area. So you want to talk about how, you know, what you told me when that question came up for us?
Yes. So my goal, I feel, as a midwife is to continually evaluate to make sure that a mom and baby are good candidates for home birth. So every single time we're talking, I'm keeping that in mind. Am I seeing things physically that would indicate this wasn't great, or even emotionally, is there something going on? And of course, we work to try and make home birth a great option, but I'm continually looking at that. And we spend a lot of time talking about that and support and preparing. When it comes to emergencies, because of that diligence, I don't see a lot of them. We don't see a lot of emergencies.
Yeah.
I think that I'm honestly a little more conservative because I work with, you saw, I bring my birth tools in a backpack, and that's what I have to work with. I don't have an operating room. I don't have a nursing staff. So because of that, I have to respect that I have the tools I have in my backpack. So a lot of times I'm in the hospital and I see things and I go, what? You guys are okay with that? That's crazy. But they have different resources. So I think what makes home birth safe is respecting the resources at hand. And then if I were to see something that indicated to me that things were not going well, I quickly try and correct it. And if we can't, we go in. Like I said, it's generally not an emergency.
Yeah. And that's what gave me comfort, was like, we're not going to have to jump in the car and rush to the hospital. Like, you know, we're going to call it before that we need to go, before anything goes wrong. So that's what really kind of gave me and my husband and my parents comfort.
Yeah. Yeah. An emergency is not in your best interest or your baby's or your husband. It's not in my best interest. I always take another midwife to a birth with me. It's not in their best interest. So we don't want to end up in that situation. If an emergency arises, because birth is birth, I have training in how to deal with that. So I have birth emergency skills training. I've taken numerous classes and trainings in that. And I have a fair amount of experience with things that come up along the way. So, yeah.
Cool. I know you said you wanted to talk about the kind of a little bit more about like the statistics on midwifery and the birth rate here in America. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about that. So when people ask about safety with home birth, I like to point out that the United States, we have a lot of great things going for us, but our maternal mortality rate is not one of them. We are, of all developed nations in the world, we are at the bottom of the list. So home birth accounts for 1.28% of all births in the nation. Home birth is not the issue here with our mortality rates in childbirth. I think the statistic for the United States, like the last one available, is over 24 maternal deaths and 100,000 births. In the UK, which is similar economically, their rate is 9. So we are 2.5 times more likely to die having a baby here than women in similar countries.
Wow.
When you look at the UK, a lot of their births are tended by midwives, and they have a very integrated, I don't know if you guys saw that, sorry. Someone just messaged me. They have a very integrated system in that midwives and obstetricians work hand in hand. And I think that leads to better birth outcomes. So when people talk about safety here, home birth is not the issue with safety in the United States childbirth environment.
And why
And
is
just
that?
know,
I mean,
I think that a lot of things, and actually our rate is climbing as opposed to going down, which is another thing that's alarming. I think a big part of that is that we're not following evidence in the hospitals. We're using outdated protocols. It takes a really long time once new evidence is introduced for systemic change. It takes about 10 years for things to truly change all the way to the ground level. So I think we're seeing a lot of outdated protocols. There's not a lot of collaboration between different care providers. So I think that's a big issue. And I think that just a lot of what's happening in the hospital is done more for liability purposes than for the well-being of moms and babies.
Yeah. Do you think that has, because, you know, you have like this vetting process in the beginning of like, is the woman that you're going to work with healthy? Do you think that has anything to do with, you know, the woman's health beforehand? I don't know how different that is from the UK versus here, but
I do. It's really interesting you say that. I read an article this morning on Facebook, of course, and it was talking about how the CDC was saying that a lot of the problem with our maternal health rate is due to issues with women's health, that they're having babies later and not active. And because I don't think that we're in that much worse a shape than women in the UK. I think I lost. Oh, hi.
yeah. Sorry, I had to get my charger because I'm not prepared with a dying phone.
There you go. I can't see any comments, so I don't know if anyone has any other questions.
I haven't seen any other questions. Can you guys still hear me? Can you hear me, Cassie?
I can, yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Cool.
I don't have a great visual.
So contraindications, did we talk about that? Yeah.
We did talk about that a little bit, things that would inhibit home birth. I did say it varies on the midwife. Different midwives have different comfort levels. So breech baby, some midwives are comfortable delivering breech babies at home, some are not. So that's something where you would really want to discuss that on a care provider basis. Interview several people to see if you find the right fit. And it kind of varies in terms of gestational diabetes. Does that automatically risk someone out of home birth? In my opinion, no. But that would depend on care provider. And it depends on how well, what the relationship is and how open the communication is and how committed a mom is to birthing at home.
Okay. Yeah, because I know just like a little bit about my story, because I haven't really shared this at all. At the end of the pregnancy, you had noticed that I had more fluid just by feeling my belly, and sent me to a high risk, what are they called? Peritonologist? Perinatologist. And I was doing monitoring every 3 days. And I think you had just told me to quit all sugar and carbs, and the fluid levels should go down, which it did, which was wonderful. So I know we were kind of teetering on the edge of like, should we still follow through with the home birth or not? But so there's a lot of tools it seems like you have in your tool basket to kind of combat these things as well.
Yes. And generally with midwifery care, depends on the midwife you have, but most home birth midwives, we look at diet and herbs as a first course of action because they tend to be the least interventive to try and correct something.
Mm-hmm.
And again, like with having a lot of fluid, the risk is that first we look at why someone might have a lot of fluid. Is something going on with baby? Are they having a hard time? Is there any issue with kidneys or any other issue with baby's development? And in a lot of cases with a lot of fluid, and you didn't have, I don't think, polyhydramnios, but in that situation, there's not an obvious reason. And so then we look at how we can try and control it to an extent to reduce any risk. Risks with having a lot of fluid could be cord prolapse in labor. Postpartum hemorrhage risk goes up because the uterus is overextended. So there's different risks there. And so we're just trying to monitor those risk factors.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Cool. Do you have anything else?
I was going to add that I work with Well-Rounded Mama, which is a pregnancy resource center in Las Vegas. We're located kind of near the airport on Pecos. And we are actually having an open house this Friday at 7 to come meet the midwives. It's just a meet and greet, not really any organized presentation. You can just come say hello. We'll all be here and ask questions.
Cool. Wonderful.
Yeah.
And where can people get in contact with you if they want to chat more or you know, obviously at the open house, but where else can they find you?
I have a website, CassieFrancoMidwife.com. There's lots of good information there. And my phone number, you're free to call or text me, 702-595-0666. Don't let the numbers scare you. Some people get a little freaked out by that, but it's been a good number. I've had it many years.
Yeah.
So 702-595-0666.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I think that kind of covered some of the basics of it. Is there anything else you want to add that you think people need to know about this?
I don't think so today.
Okay.
I'd be happy to chat again about get more in depth on certain topics. Yeah. But if you're interested in home birth, I highly suggest that you look into it a little bit and do some research. And I think you'll be surprised at what's available.
Absolutely. I know I was, and I'm really, really happy that we did it this way.
Good.
Yeah.
So am I.
Well, thank you for hanging out with me on here.
Thanks,
and if anybody else is rewatching this and you have questions, you can contact Cassie or reach out to me and I can connect you with her as well. And
yes,
I will talk with you later.
Yes, thank you so much. I enjoyed talking.
Okay, bye.
Bye.